I'm Jaime Howard.
And I'm Glen, and we are your Destination Adventure team. Now you might have seen Jaime and I around the office doing various tasks, but we've got a new task to do. We're going to travel across Kansas and tell all the great things going on in education today.
Fortunately, Jill Weber was here recently for a TIG meeting, and we got to sit down and have a discussion about all the projects she has going on in her classroom. You're going to be blown away by the projects she has the kids doing.
It's a great story.
I'm Jaime Howard, and I'm with Jill Weber. She's the 2016 Gilder Lehrman Kansas History Teacher of the Year. She teaches at Cheney. She teaches social studies for the middle school and high school there. I'm going to have her share a little quick bio about where she's come from her student experience into her teaching experience.
All right, well, I started out at Cheney my very first year teaching. This is my 12th, and I have both the 7th and 8th graders there, and I've had that for the entire time. Originally thought I wanted to teach elementary, and that quickly got the boot.
How did that happen?
I got placed in an elementary classroom, actually here in Hutch. I was going to Hudson Community College, and I was in a 4th grade classroom, kind of right in the middle of No Child Left Behind, and I have strong interest in science and social studies, but at that time, those subjects were kind of being pushed back to make more room for reading and math. And so as I was in the classroom, I kind of realized that, oh, I'm not going to get to do the subjects that I'm most interested in, so I decided to switch to secondary.
I know you've used Glen Weeby's evidence overlays.
Yes.
Can you explain how those have worked in your classroom and maybe bridge them into those curriculum areas too?
Well, I take, my favorite thing to use them with is pictures, because they're easier for the kids to visualize. And so I'll put the overlays on the picture and then give them a magic marker. There's something about a magic marker in the hand of an 8th grader that all of a sudden engagement increases. And I don't know what it is, but they love those vis-a-vis markers or expo markers. And so the same thing we would have done on paper pencil, the same exact questions are right there. Glen has, printed those questions right there on the edge of the overlay, and the kids can either answer it or they can create a little symbol, a star, and then they'll go put that star next to the image that supports that question, and then they can refer right back to it. We use it in class discussions. We use it in small groups. I use it in stations. The kids will move to this station, have to analyze a political cartoon. The overlays are already there. They just wipe clean for the next group to come back to the overlay. And then I have also shared those overlays with the ELA teachers so that they can use them if they want to as well.
That's awesome. I'm so excited. That's just one of those things that you get to learn about and share about and do in the PLC, the Social Studies PLC that meets, I think it's 4 times a year at ESSDACK. Tell us a little bit about those days, because you get just a little bit excited about those
I
days.
do get just a little bit excited. Those are my people. And it kind of started way back, probably 7 or 8 years ago. Glen had applied for and got a grant through Teaching American History called Century of Progress. And it's so funny because the initial email came into my inbox and I deleted it right away because it said, we're going to need 4 days a year. And I'm like, I can't be out of the classroom that long, and we're going to require you to do reading, and you're going to have to come in for a week in the summer, and all those things. I was just like, no, I'm not going to do it. So I deleted it immediately and just went about my day. And by the time I got back to my email that day, I had it forwarded to me from our superintendent, my principal, our curriculum director, and the librarian. Not sure why that, but all 4 of those. And so I was like, okay, I get it, I'll do it, but I'm not going to like it. And so I joined the group, and I showed up that first day, kind of reluctantly, having to have made sub-plans, and didn't realize until I got there how powerful it was going to be. 40 other middle school teachers that teach the same thing I do. I left that day with so many ideas buzzing in my head of what I could do in my classroom and things that I could immediately implement. Before that time, I hadn't done a whole lot with primary sources, just a little bit. And that day I left with a great primary resource and strategies on how to teach it, and I was able to implement it right away. And that just continued to build every time we met. Well, at the end of that grant project, it was a 3-year grant, I was sad. I was like, what am I going to do? And then Glen mentioned starting this social studies PLC group where we would open it up to high school and middle school social studies teachers. And it's just continued to provide more and more ideas and has helped me gain confidence as a teacher. And so now I'm more confident in sharing what I do because I've seen the power of what can happen when you share lessons. And I just get so excited for these days because I know I'm going to walk away with something awesome every time.
This morning I saw you guys playing a game that was absolutely hilarious. And I know previously I saw the same thing. It's because you can utilize those games into instruction to draw the student in. What are some other things that you get excited about once you come out of these days?
I need strategies for how to teach these 8th graders how to understand Abraham Lincoln's words from over 150 years ago. And so I get those strategies and those teaching ideas from the PLC group. And so what I've developed at the beginning of the year for my 7th graders, I call it a historical thinking boot camp. And we go through the historical thinking strategies that I learned here at the PLC group, sourcing a document and trying to detect bias and contextualize, corroborate, and close reading. These are words that 7th graders have never even heard of, let alone seen. And so I spend a good 3 weeks at the beginning of the year teaching them what's a primary source, what's a secondary source. And then I get to throw in fun activities like teacher in a bag.
Explain that.
It's a spin-off of one of Glen's ideas. I have the teachers at the school fill a grocery bag with 5 items that define them in some way. And the kids have to look at the items and try to figure out what teacher belongs to those items. And it's not easy, it's hard. But the conversations are great because they're looking at them going, okay, well, this is a necklace, so it has to be a girl. And this is a book, and we know that this teacher likes to read, but so does that other teacher. So they're really trying to look at the artifacts and figure out who owns these. Well, what I tell them at the end of the day, because of course they all think it's hard, and they're wrong, which is good. They need to learn that sometimes they're wrong, and it's okay. And
that's a big thing.
Oh, and it's huge for them to learn. It's like, oh, you're going to be wrong today, guys. But it's okay because historians are sometimes wrong, and they have to get new evidence to change their thinking. And so that I tell them, as hard as you think this is, guys, this was easy. Because everybody in here, every bag, is of someone you know, and they're all alive. I said, tomorrow, next time you come in, you're going to be tested for real. Because all the artifacts you're going to see next time are from someone you don't know, and that person's been dead for over 50 years. And that piques their interest, like, what? How are we going to do this? And so I kind of leave them with that teaser, and when they come back the next day, it's the real history in the bag. And I've got a variety of artifacts that all belonged to one person, and they go around and they analyze them. At the end of the day, they are able to tell me who that person is. That person's name is Paul Lohmeyer, and he was a jeweler. He loved fishing, and he had a family, and he loved to do impulsive things. And at the end of the entire lesson, I get to surprise them with the fact that he was my grandfather.
Oh, wow.
And so, and that's just, I completely and totally have piqued their interest and then give them this big surprise at the end, and they want to come back and they want to continue learning like a historian does.
How do you keep your energy up to keep their energy up?
I just love what I do. I try to plan lessons and things that I would be interested in as a kid. Because if I'm bored, they're bored. And, I'm not perfect, so not every day is like that day. But I try to just, even if it's a day that I know the information's not super awesome, maybe I'll play some fun music as we come in, and I try to sell it or fake it to make it in a way. But I want the lessons to be exciting for me. And then that excitement shows the kids.
Where do you see your role in providing a foundation of their future?
Well, history is incredibly important. Those who don't know their history are deemed to repeat it. And that's part of it. But it's more in teaching kids how to think critically and how to evaluate the sources that they're given and how to think creatively. And I try to throw in some of those activities that teach kids how to think creatively, because they get this idea of, I'm not creative. Everybody has potential to be creative. They just need to be taught how.
Yes.
And so I try to create activities that kind of force them to be creative without them knowing it.
Well, I truly thank you for what you're doing with those kids, and I really hope that we get to come visit your classroom and see some of these things in action as you're doing them.
I would love that.
So we are going to be planning that. But until then, thank you so much, Jill, for joining us today.
You're
and having
welcome.
a
It's my pleasure.
conversation.